The storm arrived like a beast awoken. The skies of Zelvar turned violet black, and bolts of pale green lightning forked across the sky. Winds howled through the treetops, and glowing spores scattered like frightened stars. Eli grabbed Naira's wrist. "This way," he shouted, even though she couldn't fully understand. The urgency in his voice was enough. They dashed through the downpour until they found a root cave, an ancient hollow formed by the intertwining trunks of the elder trees. They slipped inside, drenched and breathless. Naira touched the damp floor with her fingers. "Safe," she said. Eli collapsed onto the mossy floor, chest rising and falling. Barely. Thunder cracked overhead. The storm made speech difficult, so they sat in silence, watching as the world outside was swallowed by rain. Inside the cave, the atmosphere was thick with unsaid thoughts. The glow of bioluminescent vines cast soft blue light across Eli's face. Naira studied him, soaked, tired, yet when he looked at her, his eyes still held warmth. "I am afraid," Naira admitted. Eli looked over. "Why, the storm will pass." "Not storm," she whispered. "This, what you feel, your kiss, I do not know what to do." Eli sat up slowly. "Naira, it's okay, you don't have to do anything. I know this is alien to you." "Yes," she nodded. "You show love in ways I do not feel. I try, but it feels like copying." Eli reached out and gently touched her hand. "Then let's not copy, let's just be here, you and me." She looked at their joined hands. "On Zelvar, love is bond of thought, shared past. We become known, but you kiss me, feel warm, and yet I cannot see your memory, only your breath, your heartbeat." Eli chuckled softly. "Yeah, that's how it works for us. It's messy, not always clear, but it's real." She leaned in slightly. "You said you felt something you could not explain. Why?" His voice grew softer. "Because I've lost people before, people I loved, and when I met you, you reminded me that it's okay to feel again, even if we don't understand it fully." Naira let silence settle between them again. Outside, the storm began to fade, the thunder distant now. "I want to try," she said at last. "Try what?" "To feel this human way, to learn not just with mind but with heart, to not understand, and still care." Eli smiled. It was small but genuine. "That's all I've ever wanted." They lay side by side on the moss, not touching, just listening to each other's breath. The storm passed, but something else stayed, a shared stillness, a step toward connection. Naira didn't need to read Eli's thoughts to know. He was hers, and she was beginning to want to be his. 3 days had passed since Nilith had crashed into Jace's life, and the search ships still occasionally passed overhead, their engines humming like distant predators. During that time, Jace had maintained a vigilant watch, only venturing out to gather herbs that might help with Nilith's healing and to check on her crashed escape pod, which remained undiscovered thanks to the dense forest canopy. Inside the cabin, Nilith's condition had improved steadily. Her wound was healing at a remarkable rate, far faster than any humans would, and color had returned to her purple skin, making the subtle patterns across her face and arms more visible. They resembled constellations, Jace thought, tiny points connected by nearly invisible lines. "You're starring again," Nilith remarked, her violet eyes lifting from the circuit board she was examining. She sat cross-legged on his bed, wearing one of his old shirts that hung loosely on her slender frame. Jace quickly looked down at the communication device he was repairing. "Sorry, it's just your skin markings. They're interesting." A small smile curved her lips. "They're called Salia star maps. Every Asterian has them, but royal lineages have the most complex patterns." Her fingers traced the delicate lines along her forearm. "These record the celestial positions at my birth. They're unique to me." "Like fingerprints," Jace offered. "Similar, though with more mystical significance in our culture." She set aside the circuit board and moved to sit beside him at the small table that served as his workbench. "What are you making?" "I'm modifying this old comm unit to scan for specific frequencies, the ones your pursuers are using. If I can monitor their communications, we might get advance warning if they start searching this area more intensively." Nilith watched his hands work, the glow of her eyes reflecting off the metal components. "You're very skilled with technology, not unlike our artifice engineers." "Just an ordinary mechanic," Jace replied, feeling strangely self-conscious under her gaze. "Nothing special." "I disagree," she said simply. "There's nothing ordinary about someone who would risk their safety for a stranger from the stars." An uncomfortable warmth crept up Jace's neck. He wasn't used to such direct appreciation, or to having company at all. He'd spent years cultivating his solitude, finding peace in the absence of complex human interactions. Yet somehow, this alien woman's presence didn't feel intrusive. "Speaking of risks," he said, changing the subject, "you mentioned a coup. I think it's time you told me exactly what I've got myself involved in." Nyleth's luminous eyes dimmed slightly. She rose from her seat and moved to the window, peering out at the darkening forest. Rusty, who had initially been wary of the alien visitor, now lay contentedly at her feet. "The Asterian Imperium spans 12 star systems," she began, her accented voice soft. "For millennia, we've been governed by the royal house, my family, with the support of the High Council and the Guardian Corps, our military force." She turned to face him. "6 lunar cycles ago, my father, Emperor Thalix, died suddenly." "I'm sorry," Jace offered. She acknowledged his sympathy with a slight nod. "As his only heir, I was to assume the throne. The coronation was scheduled, preparations were underway." Her hand drifted to the healing wound at her side. "Then 3 nights before the ceremony, the commander of the Guardian Corps, Dorith Vask, launched his coup with the support of several council members." "And they tried to kill you," Jace concluded. "Yes, I was unprepared." Bitterness tinged her voice. "I believed Vask was loyal. He had served my father for decades, but he arranged for my assassination while I slept. If not for my handmaiden Oriel's warning, I would have died that night." Her eyes took on a haunted quality. "Many others did, those loyal to me, advisors, friends, servants who had been with me since childhood, all executed as collaborators." Jace set down his tools, the magnitude of her loss sinking in. "How did you escape?" "Oriel had arranged a small ship with a trusted pilot. We fled the capital under cover of darkness, but Vask's forces pursued us across 3 systems." Nyleth's voice grew quieter. "Our ship was damaged in the final confrontation. The pilot and Oriel, they didn't survive. I was placed in the escape pod and launched toward the nearest habitable world." "Nova Colony," Jace supplied. "A frontier world outside Imperial jurisdiction. I thought I would be safe here, at least temporarily." She sighed. "I underestimated Vask's determination." Jace frowned. "But why? Why stage a coup just before your coronation? Why not simply serve you as he served your father?" Nyleth returned to the table, sitting across from him. "Because I intended to reveal the truth about the heart of Asteria." "The what?" She reached into the collar of her borrowed shirt and withdrew a small crystal pendant that hung from a delicate chain around her neck. It was no larger than a thumbnail, but seemed to hold galaxies within its depths, swirling points of light that shifted and moved as if alive. Despite its small size, it radiated a palpable energy that made the hairs on Jace's arms stand up. "This is merely a key," she explained, noticing his fascination. "The heart itself is our most sacred relic, an artifact older than our civilization, discovered by my ancestors when they first achieved space travel. It contains power, energy beyond anything our scientists can explain." "What kind of power?" "The legends say it bends reality itself, space, time, matter. For generations, it was used only for the greatest endeavors, terraforming dead worlds, powering our first interstellar ships, healing widespread plagues." Her expression darkened. "But in recent centuries, its use has been restricted, its true capabilities hidden from our people. My father guarded its secrets closely." "And you wanted to reveal them?" Jace guessed. Nyleth's eyes met his, intense and unwavering. "I discovered records indicating the heart was being used for weapons development, planet killers, and worse. Such power should not be weaponized, nor controlled by a select few. I planned to place it under the oversight of a public council, with representatives from all 12 systems." "And Vask didn't agree." "Vask and his allies have grown wealthy and powerful from military contracts. Transparency would ruin them and potentially expose crimes committed in the name of imperial security." She touched the crystal pendant gently. "This key is one of 3 needed to access the heart. Vask has 1, and the High Priestess has the 3rd. As long as I control this key, Vask cannot fully utilize the heart's power." The weight of her words hung in the small cabin. Jace leaned back in his chair, processing what she'd told him. It was almost too much: galactic politics, ancient artifacts, coups, and assassination attempts, all sitting across from him in the form of a purple-skinned princess wearing his old shirt. "So that's why they're hunting you so persistently," he said finally. "Not just to eliminate a rival, but to get that key." "Yes," she clasped the pendant tightly, and they won't stop until they have it. Silence fell between them, broken only by Rusty's contented snoring. Outside, night had fully descended, wrapping the forest in darkness. "You should leave," Nilith said suddenly. "Take your dog and go to another settlement. I've placed you in terrible danger by staying here." Jace considered her words. She was right. Harboring her was increasingly risky. The rational choice would be to distance himself from this interstellar conflict that had nothing to do with him. Instead, he reached across the table and, after a moment's hesitation, covered her hand with his. Her skin was warmer than a human's, with a texture like velvet. "I'm not going anywhere," he said firmly, "and neither are you, at least until you're fully healed." Something flickered in her luminous eyes, surprise, perhaps, or relief. "Why would you continue to help me? You owe me nothing." It was a question Jace had asked himself repeatedly over the past 3 days. Why risk everything for someone he barely knew? Someone not even from his world? He had no answer that made logical sense, only a feeling, a certainty that he couldn't turn his back on her. "Maybe I'm tired of fixing broken machines," he said with a slight smile. "Maybe helping fix a broken empire sounds more interesting." A small laugh escaped her, the first he'd heard from her, musical and bright. "You are a very strange human, Jace Harlow." "So I've been told." Their hands remained connected across the table, human and alien, tentatively bridging worlds. Neither moved to break the contact. Later that night, as Nilith slept, Jace stood at the window watching the stars. Somewhere up there was her home, a civilization he could scarcely imagine, with technology and capabilities far beyond Nova Colony's modest achievements. It made his life, his battles with faulty machinery and temperamental generators, seem impossibly small. Yet Nilith, born to rule worlds, had looked at him with respect, had valued his help, his skills, had trusted him with her life and her secrets. The comm unit on his workbench suddenly crackled to life, startling him. He'd finished the modifications earlier and set it to scan for Imperial frequencies. Now it had found something. He rushed to adjust the settings, filtering out the static until words became clear, not in his language, but in Nilith's musical tongue. The translator implant behind his ear struggled to interpret, catching only fragments. "Sector 4, Life Signs, Advanced Technology Signature." An image appeared on the small screen, a topographical map of the region, and at its center, a flashing point that represented his cabin. His blood ran cold. They had found them. Jace turned toward the sleeping princess, her silver-white hair shimmering in the moonlight filtering through the window, the crystal pendant glowing faintly against her purple skin. In that moment, looking at her, he made a decision that would change his life irreversibly. He would not just hide her, he would help her reclaim her throne. Before he could wake her, a sound outside froze him in place, the soft whine of an anti-gravity drive, much closer than the search ships had ventured before. Rusty raised his head, a low growl building in his throat. They were out of time. The hunters had arrived. "Nilith, wake up!" Jace's voice was urgent but controlled as he gently shook the princess's shoulder. "They're here." Violet eyes snapped open, instantly alert. "How many?" "I'm not sure, at least one ship very close." Jace was already moving around the cabin, gathering essentials, water, rations, a portable medkit, and his most valuable tools into a weatherproof pack. "We need to move, now." Nilith rose fluidly, her movements graceful despite her recent injury. She slipped the crystal pendant beneath the collar of the fresh clothes Jace had given her, sturdy frontier garments that would blend in better than her original attire. "Do you have weapons?" she asked, tying her distinctive silver-white hair back. Jace hesitated before reaching under his workbench to remove a hidden panel. From the concealed compartment, he withdrew a compact pulse pistol. "Colony regulation sidearm? I rarely use it." "It will have to do." She examined it briefly before handing it back to him. "You're more familiar with it." Rusty whined at the door, sensing the tension. Jace knelt beside his dog. "You have to be quiet, boy, understand? Quiet." The terrier responded by lowering his body slightly, ears alert but no longer vocalizing. Jace couldn't help but think how differently this escape would go with a less intelligent animal. The night beyond the cabin windows was unnaturally still. The usual chorus of nocturnal creatures had fallen silent, a warning as clear as any alarm. Something foreign was disturbing the forest's natural rhythm. There's a system of caves about 3 kilometers east, Jace whispered, securing the pack. Used to explore them when I first settled here. They run deep into the mountains. Nylith nodded. If we can reach them without being detected. The words died on her lips as a powerful searchlight swept across the front of the cabin, its harsh beam filtering through the drawn curtains. Outside, a voice amplified by technology spoke in the musical language of the Asterians. My translator can't fully process it, Jace murmured, but I'm guessing that's not a social call. They demand my surrender, Nylith confirmed, her voice tight. They claim to offer clemency if I return willingly with the key. And you don't believe them? Her luminous eyes met his. Would you? The rear door of the cabin offered their best chance. It opened onto a narrow path that quickly disappeared into the densest part of the forest. If they could slip away unseen. Princess Nylith, the amplified voice switched to heavily accented but understandable common. We know you are inside with a human accomplice. You have 30 seconds to emerge peacefully before we are forced to take action. Jace's heart hammered in his chest. They knew about him. Any chance of claiming innocence, of returning to his simple life after this, was gone. The back door, he whispered. Now. They moved silently through the darkened cabin, Rusty padding softly beside them. At the rear entrance, Jace peered carefully through a small window. The area appeared clear, the Imperial forces seemingly concentrated at the front of the structure. Stay low and move fast, he instructed. Head straight for those large boulders, then into the tree line beyond. Nylith nodded, her face set with determination. They slipped outside into the cool night air, keeping to the shadows cast by the cabin. The sound of boots crunching on gravel at the front of the house spurred them forward. They had almost reached the boulders when a shout rang out. A beam of light cut through the darkness, catching Nylith's silver hair for just an instant before they ducked behind the rocks. Run, Jace urged, no longer concerned with quiet. They sprinted for the tree line, Rusty darting ahead as if leading the way. Behind them, commands were shouted in both Asterian and Common. The whine of energy weapons charging sent a spike of fear through Jace's spine. The first shot sizzled past them, striking a tree which immediately blackened and steamed in the cold air. Not set to stun, then. These hunters meant business. The dense forest swallowed them, branches whipping at their faces as they ran. Jace pulled Nylith behind a massive fallen trunk as more energy bolts lit up the night around them. This way, he gasped, leading her along a barely visible game trail that curved toward the east. Rusty kept pace, occasionally looking back as if to ensure they were following. For nearly an hour they pushed through the forest, the sounds of pursuit sometimes fading, sometimes growing alarmingly close. Jace's lungs burned with exertion, but Nylith moved with seemingly tireless grace, her eyes gleaming in the darkness, providing just enough light to see the path ahead. There, Jace finally whispered, pointing toward a dark opening in the rocky hillside they'd been gradually ascending. The cave entrance. They scrambled up the final incline, loose stones slipping beneath their feet. Just as they reached the cave mouth, a shout echoed from below. Imperial troops had spotted them. The interior of the cave was pitch black and smelled of damp stone. Jace activated a small light from his pack, revealing a narrow tunnel that twisted deeper into the mountain. If memory serves, this opens into a larger chamber about 50 meters in. There are multiple passages from there. We can lose them in the maze. They hurried forward, the sound of their pursuers growing louder behind them. The tunnel widened as promised, opening into a vast cavern with a ceiling that disappeared into darkness above. Phosphorescent fungi cast an eerie blue glow across the stone walls, illuminating several branching passages. Which way? Nylith asked, her voice echoing slightly in the chamber. Before Jace could answer, a low growl from Rusty drew their attention to the tunnel they'd just exited. Lights bobbed in the darkness. The Imperial hunters were inside and closing fast. This one, Jace decided, choosing a narrow passage to their right that sloped downward. Stay close. The passage twisted and turned, occasionally branching. Jace made quick decisions at each junction, trying to create as confusing a trail as possible. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew more distant, voices echoing through the labyrinthine caves. After what felt like hours of careful navigation, they emerged into another chamber. smaller than the first, but with a small underground spring bubbling from one wall and flowing into a pool. "We should rest briefly," Jace suggested, noting how Nilith's hand occasionally strayed to her healing wound. "Drink some water, catch our breath." They settled beside the pool, Rusty lapping thirstily at the clear water. Jace refilled their canteens while Nilith leaned against the cool stone wall, her eyes half closed in exhaustion. "I've cost you everything," she said softly. "Your home, your safety." Jace glanced at her. In the blue glow of the fungi, her purple skin took on an almost ethereal quality, the star patterns across her cheeks and forehead shimmering subtly. "It was just a cabin," he replied, trying to sound unconcerned. "And I wasn't using that safety for anything important anyway." A small smile curved her lips. "You're deflecting with humor." "Is it working?" "No," she reached out, her warm fingers brushing his hand. "I'm being serious, Jace. You've sacrificed too much for me already." He didn't pull away from her touch. "I made my choice, and despite current circumstances, being hunted through caves by alien soldiers, I don't regret it." Her violet eyes studied his face intently. "Why, you barely know me." It was a question Jace had been asking himself since the moment he'd decided to help her. The answer came to him now, simple and undeniable. "Because when I found you, I saw someone who needed help, and when you told me your story, I heard someone fighting for what's right." He hesitated, then added more softly, "And maybe because for the first time in years, I don't feel alone." Something shifted in her luminous gaze, a vulnerability behind the royal composure. Her fingers tightened around his. "On my world," she said quietly, "there's a belief that some souls are gravitationally bound, drawn together across time and distance like binary stars." A faint color darkened her purple cheeks. "It's considered romantic nonsense by most modern Asterians." "And what do you believe?" Jace asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Before she could answer, Rusty's head snapped up, ears forward, body tense. A second later, they heard it too, voices, but not from the passage they'd used to enter. Someone else was in the caves. Jace doused his light immediately, pulling Nilith into the shadows beside a large formation of stone. Rusty crouched at their feet, silent but alert. The voices grew closer, speaking neither common nor Asterian, but another language entirely. 3 figures emerged into the chamber from a passage on the opposite side, carrying strange, organic-looking lanterns that cast a green glow. They were humanoid, but definitely not human, their skin varying shades of blue and green, with elongated limbs and large, dark eyes that caught the light like a nocturnal animal's. "Viridians," Nilith breathed in Jace's ear, so softly he barely heard. "A species from the outer rim. They're not with the Imperial forces." The newcomers moved cautiously around the chamber, clearly searching for something. One of them, taller than the others with skin the color of deep ocean waters, paused and sniffed the air. "I smell outsiders," the Viridian said in accented common, apparently for Jace and Nilith's benefit. "No need to hide, we are not your enemies." Jace glanced at Nilith, who hesitated before giving a slight nod. Slowly, pulse pistol held ready, Jace stepped from the